Minister after minister, including the Prime Minister, made stops at those stores all week, pitching what they've billed as a grocery rebate, which is really a one-time payment through the GST tax credit system. It gets a family of four up to about $467. Here's why the feds are talking about affordability, though. According to a new Angus Reid survey, a full 1 in 3 Canadians say they're in either bad or terrible shape financially, and food costs are a major part of that struggle. Karina Gould is Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Hi, Minister Gould. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Great to be here, Vashi.
I know that you and your colleagues have been at grocery stores throughout this break week talking about some of the specific measures in this budget aimed at the issue of affordability, in particular the grocery rebate. Before I have or sort of ask you about those specific measures, I kind of wanted to start off with an existential question. Like, as the minister who oversees families, who's in charge of that file in this country, do you think there is an affordability crisis in Canada right now?
Yeah, I do. I think that, many families, and particularly lower income families, are really struggling right now to make ends meet. The high cost of rent, the high cost of food is having a big impact. And, even for folks who are, in the middle class, like they're feeling the squeeze. So yeah, people are struggling right now.
There's some quantification of that through Angus Reid today. 1 in 3 Canadians say they're either in bad or terrible shape financially. And among those who say they're in terrible shape financially, 9 in 10 Canadians say it's difficult to feed their household. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it means that things are really expensive. I talk to families all the time about these challenges. And I have to say that, it's hard. Like, I can say that when I go to the grocery store, I see the impact of it. If you're making $35,000 or $40,000 a year, it's pretty tough right now.
So that's where it kind of gets me into the measures that specifically your government have put forth in this budget. One of them, called a grocery rebate, is basically an extension of the rebate through the GST rebate through the fall economic statement. It depends on how many kids you have, if you're single, if you're a senior, but you're looking at upwards of $400, I think, and $67 if you have 2 kids. You and I have both gone to the grocery store. That's maybe 2 visits if you have a family of 4, if you're lucky. Is that enough?
Well, look, the grocery rebate isn't designed to absorb all of the additional costs that families are facing, but it's designed to be there to give that little bit of extra help. And I can say that, I was at a grocery store this morning. I'm in Thunder Bay right now and talking to them, and the owner was saying that he really notices when people get their GST tax credit from the government, because he sees customers that he, doesn't see as much coming in. And so the grocery rebate is really there to provide that extra bit of support. And it's important also not to see it in isolation. It's an important measure, but it's not the only measure that we've taken as a government. The Canada Child Benefit, which is indexed to inflation, is now almost $7,000 a year for the lowest income Canadians with children under the age of 6. And before 2015, you can compare that to maybe about $1,000 a year. So there have been really significant measures that have been taken that we've put in place because we recognize that times are tough for Canadians.
I think it's absolutely fair to talk about the Canada Child Benefit and the drastic impact that it has had, certainly, in this country. I do think, though, it's also fair to point out that despite this little bit of extra help, there are people who kind of perpetually feel as though they are in financial trouble, right? And there's a big chunk of them, 1 in 3 Canadians who feel as though they're either in bad or terrible shape financially. Does that require a more thorough response from your government? Not to take away, as I said, from what's on the table already, but should there be consideration to a more thorough response?
Vashi, I think it's a really important question, because we also have to remember that the federal government is not the only actor in this space. Provinces and territories also have responsibility for social assistance, for supporting the charitable sector, and we really need to work in partnership with them as well. And so while I think the federal government has made some really big moves, the Canada Child Benefit is one, and we've seen a drastic reduction in child poverty as a result of it. The grocery rebate is important. The climate action incentive, again, could be up to $400 that, a family in Ontario or in other provinces and territories where the backstop applies is money that's going directly to help Canadians. The increase for OAS to seniors 75 and over, the increase to GIS, like there have been a lot of measures that we have taken. And it's one of the reasons why I think you see, partners like the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto calling also on the provincial government to step up as well. And so, I think we've taken a lot of measures. Doesn't mean that we can't, think about what else needs to happen, because I think that's really important too. And we need to assess the situation in the country. But we also need to have those partners at the provincial level as well who are, making those changes to some of their programs to really ensure that we're helping, our the lowest income and most vulnerable Canadians.
Do I infer from what you said there that you don't think provinces are?
Well, I think that there's more that provinces could do. I think the calls on people who are on Ontario disability, for example, to increase that, like there are initiatives in this country where we know that we can do more. We're currently debating the Canada Disability Benefit in the House of Commons. That's a really important measure. But again, it needs to be done in partnership with provinces and territories. On housing, for example, our government has made massive investments in housing. And just a couple of weeks ago, we announced the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund, which is really looking to work with municipalities to unstick some of those issues that are putting barriers in place to build more affordable housing stock. Those are important things, but when it comes to things like rent control, that's a decision for the provinces and territories. And, we need to make sure that we're all working in concert together, because, we can take important measures at the federal level. I think we need to keep looking at what else we need to do, but we also need to make sure that provinces and territories are also supporting that work, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We have to be doing it together.
And I do take the point that it doesn't happen in a vacuum, but let me pick up on one point that you made there around housing, for example. The price of a home, and certainly there are lots of factors that contribute to it, but the price of a home since your government came into office, the average price from the Canadian Real Estate Association has gone from $441,000 to an average of $703,000 this year. I'm sure you talk to people as frequently as I do who feel, and Ipsos backed it up again this week with numbers, that if they don't own a home, they probably never will. 63% of people in this country they surveyed who said that they don't own a home said that they have given up on that dream. Yes, your government has pledged a lot of money and a lot of different programs. I believe the finance minister committed to doubling the number of homes built each year over the next decade to about 400,000, but the actual number of housing starts driven by your government's policies has fall short of that. You have missed targets that you set, and you actually had to revamp your whole housing policy 5 years after you first introduced it back in 2017.
Yeah, and I mean, housing is a shared responsibility with provinces and territories. And that's why, I'm excited about the Housing Accelerator Fund, because one of the things that, we've learned in our time in government is, we don't control all of the levers. There's municipal partners and provincial partners. And we know that there are, regulatory barriers, both, at the municipal level, but also at the provincial level when it comes to getting that housing built. And we also need to have a diversity of housing stock, right? Like, it's not about building $1 million homes. It's about making sure that we have homes that are affordable for Canadians.
But respectfully, Minister, despite your entry into the housing game, as you put it, Canadians don't feel that way, right? The point is 63% of them right now feel as though that dream is gone. It's dead. And the price of a home, what tangible impact really is there of what your government has pursued? If the price of a home is $250,000 on average, higher than it was when you first came into office. I know that there are other players that you point to, but ultimately are people who are, feeling as though that dream is gone, going to want to hear, well, this is somebody else's fault.
No, and I'm not saying that it is, but what I'm saying is that there are lots of factors that impact the price of homes. And, it is a free market. And so the demand for homes obviously is something that causes that. And we don't have enough supply in the country. I think we all know that. So the programs that we're putting in place are really about increasing supply, but it's also about increasing the right kinds of supply as well. Because if we're only building $1 million homes, well, that keeps a lot of Canadians out of the market. And so it's about making sure that you have affordable housing, you have market housing that's also, at a diverse range. And that's, really what we're trying to drive in partnership with provinces, territories, and municipalities.
Okay, Minister, I'm out of time. Thank you very much for your time.